Sri Lanka's most powerful news brand.
Hello there, very good evening to you and welcome to Prime Time News. You're with me, Stephen Lazarus.
I'm Saturang Haporachi. Let's take a look at the headlines.
Accepting of nominations for 93 local government bodies ends. Podujana Perumana nominations rejected for several local government bodies, including Maharagama and Waligama. Will Sri Lankan Airlines be shut down? 100,000 metric tons of rice to be imported a month.
The accepting of nominations for 93 local government bodies ended at noon today. The nominations of several political parties and independent groups were rejected for various reasons.
The nomination submitted by the Sri Lanka Podujana Party for the Maharagama Urban Council was rejected, citing an issue concerning the gender of a candidate. There was a minor error in the nomination list. There was a mistake in the section which indicates the gender. We have the opportunity to go to court to rectify the mistake.
They have marked male instead of marking female. That is what has happened. This was that issue. Our list was accepted while the list of the Sri Lanka Podujana Party was rejected. I will win the Maharagama Urban Council.
The nomination paper handed in by the Sri Lanka Podujana Party for the Waligama Urban Council was also rejected, citing that it was not submitted through an accepted representative.
We will not speak much about that right now. We will take legal action against it.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Party's nomination lists for the Panadura Urban Council and Agalawata Pradesh Sabha were also rejected. The nomination paper for the Agalawata Pradesh Sabha had been signed without the date, while the nomination paper for the Panadura Urban Council did not bear the signature of the party secretary.
I can be honest and tell you that the candidates on our nomination list for the 5 local government bodies are clean. From the beginning of the election process, the Rajapaksa team has been trying to delay the elections. They did not support the amendments in Parliament. Several institutes rejected their nomination applications. Those who are against corruption now have a chance to show it.
The Sri Lanka Podujana Party's nomination papers for the Badulla and Mahayangane Pradesh Sabhas were also rejected. Nomination papers handed in by the Sri Lanka Freedom Party for the Paddy Talapa and Dehatakande Pradesh Sabhas in the Ampara district were rejected as well. The district returning officer said the nomination papers were rejected due to a few errors in the candidates' signatures. The Elections Commission said calling of nominations for the remaining 248 local government bodies will begin on the 18th of this month.
Issuing a release, former President Mahinda Rajapaksa states that the joint opposition will be contesting separately as an alliance for the upcoming local government election in order to provide an alternative for the people of the country who oppose the government.
The former president states that the upcoming local government election will be a precursor to the other elections which are slated to take place, including the next presidential election. Mahinda Rajapaksa calls on the general public to cast their vote at the upcoming election based on the fact whether they support or oppose the current government, which the SLFP is a part of. He states the UNP secured victory of the 2015 parliamentary election because the president expressed statements detrimental to the alliance and because steps were taken to remove several secretaries of the UPFA. The release says although members of the SLFP within the government express statements against the UNP from time to time, they all sit together in one cabinet and support them at every important juncture. He cites the support extended to the UNP budget and the Hambantota port deal as examples of this support. Mahinda Rajapaksa also states that even though the JVP pretends to be part of the opposition, they also support the government's anti-democratic actions. Today they are asking for a mandate to strengthen a different party. What is going to happen? Won't this lead to a split in the SLFP? They were elected to parliament on the backs of the SLFP vote. But today they are working to split the SLFP. In the past, there were rumors that the two groups will join forces. We were happy about it. Even today, we say that we need to join forces. We will say this in the future as well. The president made a last-ditch effort as well. None of the party officials objected to this. However, what was their reaction? Did they want to unite the party? Did they want to protect the party? They didn't want to do it. The SLFP has a constitution. As the chairman of the SLFP, even President Maithripala Sirisena is subject to it. We need to clearly state that if any member of the SLFP violates his constitution during the upcoming elections, we will take legal action against all of them. It was Mahinda Rajapaksa who paved the way for us to form a government with the UNP. We pleaded him to wait for a while. We pleaded with him to feel Chamal Rajapaksa, who has no allegations against him in the party, because the votes we lost for the sworn could be won back with the support of President Maithripala Sirisena. We told him we can form a government of our own, so let's make Chamal our prime ministerial candidate and allow Maithripala Sirisena to head the campaign. But he did not agree to that. The end result was that the votes dropped from 5.8 million to 4.8 million. Well, who else? President J.R. Jayawardena never helped Premadasa at the presidential election. He did not give the presidential candidacy voluntarily. But he did not pull Premadasa by the leg when he was elected president. Madam Chandrika did not field Mahinda Rajapaksa as a presidential candidate voluntarily. Neither did she help him. She also did not pull him down by the leg when he was elected. But what is he doing now? After President Maithripala Sirisena won the election, he has given the party to him and taken a few away from the party and are seated in the opposition. So if it wasn't him, who split the party? Who did?
Several politicians and civil society activists also weighed in on the release issued by former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
The people will no longer vote for Mahinda's moustache, his sarong, or just because he beats his chest and proclaims this as his country. The ship is sinking. The people will move to somewhere they can win. People don't remain in sinking ships. There is a saying that the fleas on a dog leave the dog when it is dying. This is what is happening to Mahinda Rajapaksa as well. The people who carried Mahinda afloat, or his servants, or those who relied on the scraps from his table, will no longer stay with him. They say that bees are attracted to a fragrant flower. Therefore, the entire country has been enthralled by the fragrance of the flower bud. The struggle to gain nominations from this party was the first sign of this. We cannot forget the large-scale fraud, the undemocratic acts and the dictatorial acts committed by the previous administration. We cannot forget how they tried to change the constitution in order to stay in power. Looking back, the current administration is very civilized.
Following an event held in Kelaniya today, Field Marshal Minister Sarath Fonseca expressed these views to the media.
His tendency of retreating has been there for a long time. When the war effort was intensifying around 1990, he fled from the army. He did not return to the country for 15 years, not even for a vacation or any other event. When his brother became the president, he returned to the country. That is his patriotism.
Now for a short commercial break. Welcome back to the news. Still in local news, farmers in Hingurakkota charge that the Department of Agriculture is yet to pay them for the paddy purchased from them during the last harvesting season.
Farmers stated that the Department of Agriculture purchased their paddy on the promise their payments would be provided. Paddy had been obtained from farmers in the Polonnaruwa, Madirigiriya and Sevagama areas in this manner as well. The farmers stated that it has been over 2 months and that the department is yet to pay their dues.
They promised to provide payment within a week. They didn't give us any guarantee in writing. They won't say when our money will be paid. They are releasing water for this season on the 15th. As farmers, we are helpless. We don't have paddy or money. We won't have any money to feed our children or send them to school. We only have this paddy to feed ourselves.
A group of farmers facing this issue confronted an agrarian official in Hingurakkota. Following a phone call with the agrarian director in charge of the Polonnaru district, the official stated that the director had agreed to a meeting with the farmers on Monday.
The Cabinet's Subcommittee on Economic Management, chaired by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, decided to import 100,000 metric tons of rice monthly. This measure is aimed at enabling consumers to purchase a sufficient amount of rice for a reasonable price during the festive season.
The government has permitted any private trade establishment to import rice to the country until the April Sinhala Tamil New Year holidays. A special commodity tax of 25 cents per kilogram on imported rice will be in effect until the 31st of March. In addition, the Ministry of Finance and Mass Media has permitted coconut milk producers and industrialists to import coconut centre free of tax. The ministry says respective units have been instructed to issue permits in one day for the immediate release of coconut shipments from the port. In addition, the government has taken steps to ensure an uninterrupted supply of essentials such as dal, canned fish, big onions, potatoes and sprouts during this period. The Finance Ministry is to grant concessions on import tax and storage expenses borne by importers.
Welcome back to the news. In a recent communique to employees of Sri Lankan Airlines, its chairman Ajit Dias stated that the company is facing a risk of shutting down. Ajit Dias notes that the government has very little choice and that it is looking at three possible solutions.
In his memo, Chairman of Sri Lankan Airlines Ajit Dias notes that Sri Lankan Airlines is operationally cash flow deficient and that their costs exceed the income by a wide margin. He notes that two state banks who are the principal tenders of Sri Lankan Airlines are at a risk due to this situation. He notes that due to this situation, funding the losses of the airline past the 31st of March 2018 will be a very hard call. The chairman of Sri Lankan Airlines in his letter speaks of three possible solutions. Restructure the company in such a way to attract an equity partner. Carry out the restructuring in a manner that the airline can manage its own affairs without government funding if finding a partner fails. And closure of the company if both above options are unavailable. The memo notes that a ministerial committee headed by Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe and assisted by a task force of officials will work closely with an experienced international consultant to start the restructuring process. The process was to begin on the 11th of this month, with a preliminary report being produced by the 20th. The memo states that the entire solution needs to be implemented on or before the 31st of March 2018. According to the annual report of Sri Lankan Airlines for the financial year 2016-17, the national carrier suffered a loss of over 28 billion rupees. The day-to-day expenses of the airline are being managed through a 7.5 billion rupee bank draft. The Alliance of Unions of Sri Lankan Airlines, in a letter to the chairman of Sri Lankan Airlines Ajit Dias, has responded to the recent memo sent out to all employees regarding the fate of the national carrier. The Alliance of Unions notes that the current management was appointed by the government nearly 3 years ago in order to ameliorate the projected financial decline of the airlines and to rectify many malpractices and misappropriations allegedly committed by the former administration. The letter notes that the current administration took steps to dismiss such alleged malpractices and therefore the only burden that the current administration had to take over was the accumulated debt of the national carrier. The Alliance of Unions of Sri Lankan Airlines reiterates that the current management does not have the prerequisite competencies or the attributes to manage the airline, leave alone bring any stability to it. It adds that the task entrusted and accepted by the board was not to compromise the livelihood of nearly 7,000 employees and their families by giving priority to stature, travel benefits, bonuses or having dealings which could itself be a conflict of interest for a director in any company. The trade unions question as to why experienced international consultants were not invited when the management first took over and adds that it may have been more prudent to have hired such a competent person locally or internationally from the inception. The letter adds that the current CEO has absolutely no business or managerial experience of any significance to qualify for a task of this scale at such a critical time. It also notes that if the current chairman, CEO or any one member of the current board of directors is retained and remains a constituent of the management of Sri Lankan Airlines following the restructuring process, the entire restructuring process will prove to be ineffective and will not yield the desired results. The subject minister said in parliament that this company is not worth even a rupee. He said that this should be buried. The comments gained international attention, and because of this, we were not able to attract an investor. There is a kitchen cabinet in place. This is not a part of their property. They cannot just shut it down. The chairman informed us of the kitchen cabinet's decision. As a union, we will not allow them to take such decisions. We will continue this fight. We are going to meet the president next week and we will inform him of all this. We hope to move ahead with the restructuring process together with him.
A group of banking employees engaged in a protest in Colombo today.
The Ceylon Bank Employees Union demonstrated in this manner to protest the suspension of 7 employees. The protesters charge these employees have been suspended after an argument broke out between the trade unions and the upper management of the bank during a meeting. The protest began opposite the Lake House roundabout and continued towards the Ministry of Public Enterprise Development via the Lotus Road. A correspondent in the area stated heavy traffic was reported in the area as a result. The protesting banking employees dispersed after handing over an epistle containing their demands to an official of the Ministry of Public Enterprise Development. The rulers are suppressing the trade unions. They are slashing away the rights of the employees. They are doing this because the trade union leaders are rising up against the rights of the employees being slashed. They are not letting the trade unions hold meetings. They do not allow the trade unions to distribute the reviews. They are controlling all of this by issuing circulars. The rulers of the People's Bank are trying to suppress the trade union leaders who are rising against this.
The fast, which was launched by 32 trade unions attached to the Ceylon Electricity Board opposite the CEB head office in Colombo, entered its 4th day today.
The protesters demand an immediate stop to slashing their annual bonuses and incentives for medical leave. The protesters also oppose the move taken to pay engineers who worked during the recent strike action 3 to 4 times their daily salary. There is an attempt to increase the electricity tariff by 12% from January next year. They are burdening the people. However, the benefits of the workers who work to supply electricity during all national disasters are slashed, though they are praised by the ministry for their dedication. If the ministry does not solve the matter as promised by Monday, we will launch a strike action. Yesterday, we discussed the matter with the ministry secretary. He said the medical leave and benefits will be granted, but the ministry has promised a solution by Monday. Until we get it, we will continue with this fast.
A media briefing organized by the Government Surveyors Association was held in Colombo today.
By handing over the duties of the Department of Surveyors to an American company known as Trimble Incorporated, the Yahapalana government is attempting to obtain funding worth $157 million or roughly $23.5 billion. This is another effort to put us further in debt. The Department of Surveyors is around 218 years old. This is something which works closely with the people. Soon after this proposal was approved by Cabinet, we called on the government to stop it, or else we would resort to trade union action. The government continued to turn a deaf ear to this. When our Central Committee convened, a decision was reached to inform the public of this injustice once again on the 15th of December. We have a limited number of surveyors in the country. We have limited resources. There is an urgent need to survey around 150,000 plots of land in line with the government's plan to provide deeds for these lands. An American company submitted a project proposal. They submitted a similar proposal in 2011 and it received cabinet approval. However, the project was not initiated due to various reasons. The subject minister obtained cabinet approval and we are about to implement it. However, these groups are opposing it. This is being done due to a national need.
Have
we forgotten?
Prime Minister was aware Arjun Aloysius, son-in-law of Arjuna Mahendran, was CEO of Perpetual Treasuries when Mahendran was to be appointed as governor. Mahendran assures Prime Minister Aloysius will step down and will not be involved in PTL operations. Evidence reveals Aloysius continued to be de facto head of PTL from January 2015 to date and was directly involved in PTL operations. It was revealed Mahendran violated assurance given to the Prime Minister. Walt and Rowe Associates Private Limited, a legal firm which lists Arjun Aloysius as a director, paid the rent for former Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayaka's Monarch Residency penthouse-style apartment. Walt and Rowe Associates Private Limited is owned by Perpetual Capital Holdings and is a subsidiary of W.M. Mendes and Company Limited. The directors are Jeffrey J. Aloysius, Arjun Aloysius and Suren Muthuraja. The apartment was leased at a monthly rental of 1.45 million rupees. The lease agreement amounted to 7.3 million rupees, while an additional 1.4 million rupees was paid in cash. The former finance minister's wife introduced Aloysius to the owner of the apartment as the person who will be leasing out the apartment.
Have we forgotten?
Let's take a look at the structure of the Perpetual Group. Now, Perpetual Treasuries Limited is owned by Perpetual Asset Management. Perpetual Asset Management is owned by Perpetual Capital Holdings. And Perpetual Capital Holdings is owned by Perpetual Capital. Now, according to the evidence that has been placed before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, the two sole beneficiaries or owners of this group are Arjun Aloysius and Jeffrey Aloysius. That means even though Arjun Aloysius resigned from the post of Chief Executive Officer from Perpetual Treasuries Limited, he can have a direct say or involvement with Perpetual Treasuries Limited. Now, this is also proven through evidence when he made a phone call on the 29th of March 2016 to Kasun Palisena on the day of the auction, instructing him how to bid at this auction. Now, in addition to that, let's take a look at the Monarch Residency apartment of former Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayaka. The witness who owned that apartment, we shall call her as W. Now, in her testimony, she said that the former Finance Minister's wife, who we will call MK, visited the apartment to inspect it and thereafter made a phone call to a certain individual. And after that individual came, the former Finance Minister's wife had introduced this individual to the owner of this apartment. Now, this individual who came is none other than Arjun Aloysius. And during this interaction, it was clear, and according to the evidence, the former Finance Minister's wife had told the owner of the apartment that Arjun Aloysius will be paying the rent for that Monarch Residency penthouse-style apartment. More revelations from the Bond Commission tomorrow. The tenure of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the bond issue will end in 17 days. The people await the decision of the Bond Commission.
The 2015 and 2016 bond scams, the biggest theft in Sri Lankan history. Who should be held responsible for this grand theft? Who caused millions and millions in losses to the country's state banks? Who stole EPF money, the wealth you earned with your own sweat and blood? Who bowed down to fraud and corruption and allowed this massive theft? The entire nation awaits the final report of the Presidential Commission of Inquiry on the issuance of Treasury bonds. The first to expose the bond scam, news first.
Still on local news, Lanka Star Asia Star Awards Night 2017 was held in Colombo last night. The event was organized by the Sri Lanka Institute of Packaging and Packaging Development Centre.
One of the main objectives in our budget and in our development strategy is to improve our exports. Unfortunately, during the last 2 decades, there has been a decline in exports in terms of our GDP. There may have been real growth, but as a ratio to GDP, it is declined. You know that in the Hambantota area, we have started setting up an export zone where there will be 300 new export industries. There will be an export zone in Trincomalee and many other places where the BOI zones will be upgraded.
Tafla Limited, a subsidiary of the Capital Maharaja Organisation Limited, was awarded the Lanka Star Bronze, Silver and Gold medals for a variety of products of the organisation.
An event titled Changing Mindsets and Attitudes Through Value-Based Education, organised by Think Equal, was held in Maharagama today. The event was held with the participation of Minister, Provincial Councils and Local Government, Faiza Mustafa and several other dignitaries.
I believe that we are a long way from being secular. The average Sri Lankan, I'm ashamed to say, considers his race or religion prior to anything else. Sri Lanka's voting pattern has been primarily to vote for a person for a race or religion. We have seen other countries, the US produced a coloured president, India produced a Sikh prime minister, but we are a long way off from achieving that.
Think equal is most important in these days because your concept is very positive to Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka have about 4 ratios. So however, we must think we are Sri Lankan. So we must forget about the caste and religious and the color of the people also.
You are the people who are going to make this happen, who are going to build and create a new generation of Sri Lankans who show the way, who show that we can love. We don't have to hate. Who are going to have educated hearts, not just educated heads. Who are going to have this missing subject brought into their lives and their communities and make Sri Lanka peaceful and strong and prosperous.
For the slightest thing, we think that, we are more superior and we need to, put people down. So this mindset has to change. This attitude has to change. And the only weapon is through education. 75% of the brain development takes place in the first 5 years of life.
The launch of the updated Code of Best Practice on Corporate Governance 2017 took place today.
The event was organised by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka.
Corporate governance has become a key priority on the agenda of capital market regulators and is considered an important factor in strengthening capital markets. Implementing sound corporate governance practices that comprise of clear and transparent disclosures, encourage accountability and ethical leadership, create value for companies, facilitate access to capital and enhances investor confidence. I believe that while a lot has been done in the area of corporate governance, Sri Lanka needs to ensure a responsive regulatory framework and cannot afford to fall behind. Furthermore, good market conduct is driven by good behavior and not by rules and regulations alone.
We leave you tonight with tonight's illustrated news by Asankal Aduwa Hetty. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Chaturanga Pawarati.
I'm Stephanie Lazarus. Good night.